Hey, welcome to Decaf. We're back. It's 2021. Mark, are you drinking coffee in the afternoon? Because I just made a latte.
I guess it is the afternoon. Yeah, it's 1 o'clock. I shouldn't be. I've already had like 2 energy drinks this morning, but I know I need some energy today. But yes, I am.
Oh my gosh, I broke my foot on New Year's. Mark knows this, so I'm telling this to the viewers who are unfortunate enough to be listening to this. I broke my foot during the break, and apparently alcohol slows down bone growth, which some may argue that it slows down everything, but it slows down bone growth. And so I've been drinking celery juice every morning because apparently it's really good for you, and it's really good. It's got a lot of calcium, so I have not been drinking coffee till afternoon. So this is my
Oh,
first caffeine today.
does alcohol slow down? Is it alcohol or caffeine?
No, alcohol slows down bone growth. So I haven't
Oh.
been drinking alcohol, and I've been drinking a ton of celery juice.
If you didn't drink alcohol your whole life, you might be taller. Who knows?
Who knows? I mean, my genetics don't really work in my favor, but I am
No.
like 4'11".
You would
So,
probably be like 6'4" if you didn't drink. So that's on you. You're
gosh, I could have had a WNBA career if I could just give up the marks.
making $5,000 a year. That'd be incredible.
Oh my gosh, you're my nightmare. We'll talk about sports a little bit later, not including my WNBA, my career that I missed in the WNBA. But right now, let's talk about something else that is contentious. Yeah, so we're filming this on a Thursday. Yesterday, Wednesday, January 6th, was it was a day. Like, I wasn't even there, and I was emotionally exhausted by the end of the day. Like, I was in my bed by 7 p.m., like, emotionally exhausted, just from watching everything that happened. I think there's a lot of different takes that we can have on it. And Mark and I, we talked about it briefly. We tend to agree, but one take that I think that we can all agree on is no matter what your political view is, there is no reason to lose your temper. Like, there's just not. Like, I'm sorry. There's no reason to pitch a fit. Mark, do you have anything to add?
It's not even losing your temper, though. It's like people can lose their temper at home. It's like when you break into buildings, you commit federal
Yeah.
crimes, you go into people's offices. A woman got shot. I mean, you're breaking in, you're breaking and entering. I mean, that's what you're doing. And you can call it treason, sedition, whatever you want to call it. I don't know the specifics of what you call it, but it's not acceptable. It's not just losing your temper. I think that even though I even disagree with what they were protesting, I don't even really quite understand what they were protesting. I guess that Trump won. I'm not sure. But you're allowed to do whatever you want as long as you stand outside and hold up signs. You can protest. I mean, I want to protest Chick-fil-A not being open on Sundays. It doesn't matter what you're protesting. You have the right to do it. But when you break into somewhere, it's just not acceptable. And the way that a lot of these people who seem to be very pro-police, these are the same people who said, "Oh, respect our officers," and like we're not respecting them at all yesterday. And of course, it's not all of them. I'm not going to go into that. I'm sure there was people
Totally.
protesting. Whether or not I agree with that is different, but it's not losing your temper. It's breaking the law, and it's just unacceptable. And we can talk about, the left and all this other stuff. It doesn't matter. It's unacceptable. And that's where we need to start off. Like, there's no excuse for what happened yesterday, and you can't make one.
Well, just like there was no excuse for what happened in DC when people were burning things down in the streets, or what happened in Portland, or whatever. Chris Cuomo on CNN months ago, he said whoever said protests were supposed to be peaceful. And then we flash forward to yesterday, and they're saying that these protests were out of control. Well, what I say to that is, like, I understand why groups of people get angry. I understand getting angry and not knowing how to express yourself and feeling like you have to resort to violence. You don't have to. That's a choice that you're making. You don't have to, but I understand anger, and I totally understand all of that. It's just making a bad choice about the outlet of that anger. And whether it's burning down a business in the street or breaking into the Capitol, both are unacceptable means of expressing anger. I love a protest. I love a march. I love a demonstration. I think that that's a constitutional right that we should definitely take advantage of, but nowhere in the Constitution does it say run over people and break windows and set buildings on fire.
I felt like and of course I'm looking at my social media, and it was kind of like conservatives who were the most loud and saying that, these people burning down businesses, doing these things are wrong, they're awful, this is illegal, it's a riot. And of course I agree with that. We're the ones who were like maybe not defending what happened yesterday, but like they were saying, it wasn't that big of a deal, and if it wasn't for Trump getting the election stolen, it never would have happened. It's like they were making excuses for this, and it just wasn't. If you're going to criticize somebody on the other side, you need to hold yourself to the same standard. And you can't say, like rioting's only okay when something I agree with happens. That's not okay. It's like either it's bad and it was awful when these people rioted and burnt down business and all these horrible things in the spring, and it's bad when you go into a federal building, break in and steal federal property, go into offices. It was just a really sad day, and I think that at some point we just need to get past the politics of it and just say this is wrong no matter what. Let's move on. Hopefully that's the last we're going to hear of this, and we're going to be able to move on as a country and hopefully find some kind of healing. Because it seems like there's almost a civil war going on right now between different political like factions.
Well, let's zoom out for a second also. And this is what really bugged me today is I get on Twitter and you see celebrities in one breath on Twitter saying that Trump ruined their lives. And in the next breath, they're giving Vogue a tour of their home on YouTube. And meanwhile, I'm on the phone talking to people in my outreach capacity, people who are on Tennessee's public assistance systems, and they're trying to support their families with just one job because they lost their job because of COVID, and they're trying to support their family on their husband's job. And one woman that I spoke to today literally said, unprovoked, she said, I do not care what happened yesterday. I am trying to support my family, and I need help from this and help from this and help from this, and let's all move on and let's have each other's backs and let's just forget about it. And I think that that's what bothers me the most is the people who have the haves saying that Trump ruined my life, and the have not, so to speak, saying, but he didn't, please help me. I still, no matter what's going on, I still need help. And I just think that there's so much more that we could focus on outside of politics, of just having each other's back and helping our fellow man, when we're just focused on politics constantly.
And outside of everything that was happening yesterday, which was disgusting, watching CNN cover what happened yesterday was something else. It's like these people, a mostly peaceful protest for what happened in the spring, are like, oh, this is an all out like treason. And it's like it's not peaceful. It's all violence. Like they had, and it's interesting when they said like, where's the police? Like, well, you talked for a year about defunding them. Like that's where they are. It was just, it's. You just see, and of course, yesterday was unacceptable no matter what, and like you can't make excuses for it, but it is interesting to see the way that people on both sides view it differently when it's something they agree with. And I mean, CNN was a real, watching that yesterday, it's like, I wish you would have covered the other stuff like this, because this was the same idea. But the inconsistency on both sides is stunning, and we really just need healing, and that's what it comes down to. Hopefully this does not happen again, because this is a weird, crazy time to live in.
Yeah, lose your timber at home where someone else doesn't have to pay for it. Don't lose it on someone else's property.
Yeah, or lose by not. Yeah, just be mad. You don't have to break property. Like you don't have.
Yeah, keep it in your own home. Mark and I totally agree on that. Our thoughts and prayers are with the woman that lost her life yesterday. It's just such a sad series of events, and hope that this never happens again.
And I think there's police officers that went to the hospital. I mean, like everybody who was injured, especially the police yesterday. I mean, you got to feel for, and hopefully everyone's okay.
I know. I think it's a year that we need to zoom out and say, what are the consequences of everything that's happened? And is this really the way that we want to move forward? Because I don't think so. I definitely don't think so. So let's talk about kind of, I wouldn't say the boring part of yesterday, but it almost was the boring part of yesterday, which was the Georgia Senate race. I mean, we thought that was going to be like the big thing, and it ended up being the most boring thing that happened yesterday. Yeah. How's that possible?
Yeah, it was. I mean, that was a big thing. I mean, I'll be the first to admit, I pretty much nailed the presidential election and all the Senate races, and I was wrong on this one, Georgia. I really did think that both Republicans were going to take it. I thought people would want a divided government, especially in Georgia, but I mean, it was very close. A lot of what happened was that the counties that went for Trump big last time during the election, they just didn't come out this time. They came out 5-6%, or 5-6% difference, and a lot of them did not come out. And no matter what you think about the presidential election and what happened, if you keep saying something's rigged, why would people come out to vote if they think that it's already a rigged system? And I do think people truly believe that. They think that the entire thing was like, I don't think it's, so if you do believe that, why would you come out and vote? And I think that you see the difference in those elections. And that was probably the difference between at least Purdue winning and losing.
Yes.
Not to necessarily blame Trump for that, but if you do think that it was rigged, it's hard to come out and vote. And I think that was a major problem. And I think that both the Republican candidates did not do a great job. I mean, David would not debate. He didn't debate John Ossoff, and I think that was a mistake. And Kelly Loeffler, just like I watched her debate with Reverend Warnock, and she sounds so robotic. Doesn't it's yeah, it's like her voice is robotic, and she just doesn't have any. It's like all talking points, and it's like, say what you want about Reverend Warnock and his policies, which I'm sure I don't agree with, but he came off as way more likable, personable. Like he had, and I just think that Ossoff was a bad candidate. I was surprised he won. He's a 33-year-old kind of definition of white male privilege who's never worked a day in his life and had millionaire parents, but he won the election because I think of missteps Purdue took, and I think that obviously Trump didn't help, and I think that talking about it being a rigged election is not going to make people feel a reason to vote if you think it's not going to matter anyway.
Well, I think that Mark and I both know this because we've worked in politics before. I've done like the campaign thing. We know what we're talking about when we say you have to inspire voters to mobilize. Like that's the only way that you win an election. You can be the smartest person, you can have the best policy ideas, and none of that matters. It's like, Mark, did you ever, when we were in New York, did you see Wicked on Broadway ever?
Yes.
Where she talks about you can be a great communicator, you can be very talented, but it means nothing if you're not popular. And I hate that. I hate that, but it's the truth. You have to be the type of person that inspires people to come out and mobilize and vote for you. And unfortunately, Loeffler and Purdue didn't do that. And I don't know. I think that they'll look back on their campaign and say, where did we go wrong? And I think ultimately it's going to be that they were not likable. They didn't inspire people to vote.
No, I mean, you can say what you want about them, but they were not good candidates. Neither of them were people who I consider good candidates. And that's like, I know it's not necessarily true, but there's the insider trading stuff. There's all this other stuff that went along with their campaign. Mm-hmm. It was a tough campaign. I don't think they did a good enough job. I don't think they did a good enough job differentiating themselves and saying, hey, like, this is me. I'm a likable person. Listen to some of the things that I've gone through in my life. I mean, Kelly Loeffler has an incredible story, and she didn't really talk about it. She kept saying Trump, 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 and like, that's it. And that's not it. I mean, I don't think that's what to run on. Like, you have, he is. The one thing I would say, I think Republicans are very worried about what happened because they say, well, look, the Democrats have control over everything. And I don't want to undervalue what happens. It was a bad day. And I mean, as somebody who also thinks that a divided government would have been much better, for sure. It's not going to be as bad as people think. You have people like Joe Manchin in the Senate. So all of the worst leftist ideas that you're worried about, if you're worried about Medicare for all and the Green New Deal, those aren't going through. Joe Manchin is basically a Republican. He's basically, and then you have some of these other people who won elections like Mark Kelly in Arizona. They have run as moderates. They have run against these things, the Green New Deal, Medicare for all, $15 minimum wage. So there might be things that we don't like. I mean, there might be tax increase, which of course we don't like, but all of the really extreme things they're proposing, they don't have the numbers, and the House majority is much smaller than it was last time. So if you 7 or 8 moderate Democrats who say I'm not going to go along with that, out of like 100 and whatever there is, nothing's going to pass. So I think that the farthest left things that we have to worry about are not going to go through. So it's still not great to have one party control, but they have no edge. I mean, it's 50-50, and they have Kamala as the split, but it's like Joe Manchin has to go along with it. You know, Mark Kelly, and even the people who won in the Democratic places, they have run on these moderate agendas comparatively, not necessarily moderate. So it's not good. We need to be worried about it, but it's not going to be as devastating as if they had 52 or 53 seats as people were projecting.
I very rarely like listening to Mark talk, but when he talks about stuff like this, I love it because you're so knowledgeable about these things. So I actually love listening to you.
I'm knowledgeable about, but it is important to think about people's kind of what they believe in policy-wise, not just their party, because Joe Manchin is not the same as Barbara Boxer. You know, it's like there's a huge difference. Mark Kelly's not AOC. So like they're not all together, and there is going to be stuff that passes that we don't like, but it's not going to be as extreme as it could have been. I think that we should at least be thankful for that. And there's another election in 2 years.
Yeah, there is. And there's also state politics. Let's talk about that for a second. You know, when there are things that we don't agree with going on at the federal level, or when there's the parties or things are split between each parties, one party has the White House, one party has Congress, whatever, and there's gridlock, that makes state politics more important than ever. And so I'm really actually excited because Beacon Impact released its agenda yesterday. Beacon Impact, if you're not aware, is the Beacon Center, our sister organization that advocates on behalf of certain policies that the Beacon Center does research on. And there are several things that the Beacon Center has been doing that Beacon Impact is going to work on, including we've been working on right to work for a long time, a constitutional amendment for that, certain healthcare reforms, like like certificate of need. We've been working on that for a very long time. And we talked about certificate of need before, making sure that we can open up the healthcare market, occupational licensing. There have been so many things that we've worked on that I think now is as important a time as ever to be working on the state level and highlighting why state politics are so important, because they are so much more local.
And I actually think that the most exciting thing when I saw, I mean, obviously the Beacon Impact's on the agenda, but something that Beacon has been working on, that Beacon Impact's going to take up in the legislature, is this fast tracking innovation. I get really excited about that. And it's kind of just this way that we want Tennessee to be the kind of the innovation capital of the US. We want people like Elon Musk to want to come here, but not just Elon Musk. We want small business owners to be able to open up a business in the garage without overreaching government, and this idea that government should have to prove what regulations are needed. If it's not health or safety related, why are we doing this? All we're doing is hurting entrepreneurs. We're hurting small business owners. We're hurting people like Elon Musk just moved to Texas. Why couldn't he move to Tennessee? I mean, it's the same idea. And a little bit better laws for innovators and entrepreneurs. And I think that Beacon Impact working that legislatively, and the Beacon Center talking about that and saying, hey, we need to get rid of some of these over regulations and things that have nothing to do with health and safety, so that we can help small business owners. We want them to come here. We want them to feel the guy who makes $5,000 a year and wants to start his own business in his garage, and the guy who's a billionaire wants to come here and do it. We want jobs, and these kind of rules are going to help us create them. So I'm very, very excited about that. And that's kind of a hat tip to Justin for kind of looking ahead a year ago and saying, hey, this innovation thing's a really big deal. We should be trying to make Tennessee the most business friendly in the correct way, not giving incentives of any state.
You know, this morning I woke up and I was really thinking, I grew up on really close to the Alabama-Georgia line, really close to Atlanta. Atlanta was the biggest city I grew up near. And we went over there all the time to go shopping, to do anything, because in small town Alabama, there weren't many shopping options. And I was just thinking this morning about the culture of Atlanta versus Nashville. And Atlanta is such a bigger city than Nashville is still. So many more businesses. The airport's huge. Driving around there is really driving around a big city. But one thing that Nashville has that Atlanta doesn't really have is like a persona of this is where people go to succeed. And traditionally that's because it's music. You know, people go to Nashville to try to succeed in music. But we want Nashville and the whole state of Tennessee to be somewhere that people go to succeed in everything. You know, people leave Georgia, people leaving Atlanta to come to Nashville. Nashville grows, going to Memphis, going to Knoxville, going to Chattanooga, going wherever, to grow these cities into be larger cities all over Tennessee to ultimately help our economy. I would love for Nashville or Memphis or Knoxville, whichever one decides to be the next Atlanta, to grow and be huge and successful, and for people to come here to succeed in something other than business. That really hit me straight in the feels this morning when I started thinking about that, because I was reading Georgia election coverage and thinking, like, you know, Tennessee could be the next Georgia as far as having a massive city where people, very successful people, come and bring their money.
Yeah, and I mean, people go to Georgia to sit in traffic, or Atlanta to sit in traffic, to come to Nashville to succeed. But like you said, I mean, it's not just Nashville. I mean, some of the coolest things are happening in Chattanooga. You see Knoxville is growing leaps and bounds, like a cool city to live in now. And it's like they kind of righted their government a little bit, and they're spending less money. Like it's not just Nashville. In fact, Nashville might be the last choice because of the taxes and what they're doing. But Nashville's a cool city, but there's these other places that really have the opportunity. And I think Knoxville and Chattanooga specifically have cool places that people want to come. There's a huge famous university in Knoxville. Chattanooga is this cool outdoor city that's on big 4 state lines. Like, there's a lot of great things going on. And I think just some changes in the law and allowing businesses to try to experiment and try new things without having to worry about government overreach is a big deal. So I'm excited. I think when we look back in 5 years, Tennessee should be the place everyone wants to go. It should be the innovation capital. If we are, it's going to be because of the work that Beacon Center and Beacon Impact does.
Yeah, amen. I totally agree with that. I'll leave Mark with that mic drop because I thought it was awesome, because I'm about to roast him really good on our last topic. Because hey Mark, can I get a Roll Tide? Just give me one.
We never agreed I would say that. That is not a bet. I'm not saying. You can't just make up a bet after it happens.
I thought I would give it a try. Nope. I am the most nervous person in the entire world, and the thought of my team playing Mark's team and the crap that Mark already gives me just for being myself. Yeah. I was so nervous that Alabama was going to lose to Notre Dame, but we pulled it out. But Mark did. Your bets were successful.
And we talked about this on the show 2 weeks ago. I said I think Alabama wins by about 11. It's not going to be a blowout, but I mean it's 17. And yeah, I mean they cover the 20 points. It was not a blowout. It wasn't particularly close either. But I mean Notre Dame really shut down Alabama in the second half, but they just couldn't score. And Alabama's defense was good. And Notre Dame is not built from playing from behind. They have a great offensive line, good running backs, but when you're down by 17 points, it's hard to run the ball. So I thought Alabama played very well defensively. They had some big plays, and it was a good win for them. It was kind of more or less what I expected. And Alabama's a good, and Devontae, and we have a Heisman winner too. Unfortunately,
I know my little.
I bet on Mac Jones to win it, but he did not.
Well, my little honey Devontae won it. I love him so much. He literally, there's a photo of him holding the trophy, and he still has a little baby face, and he looks like a happy 12-year-old boy on the playground. And it's just it's very sweet, very endearing. I'm so excited for him.
He's a great story too. You want to cheer for the kid.
You really do want to cheer for him. I loved it. Last year. We were all afraid he was going to declare for the draft, the NFL draft, and he wrote a letter and sent it out to the whole Alabama social media networks that said his work wasn't done. And now he came back and won the Heisman. So you love to root for a kid like that. And his mom with her little shaky voice as he was accepting the award. It was really endearing and a really sweet moment to watch. One thing that I'm glad of is that no one from Ohio State won the Heisman. And, you would think I'm about to trash Ohio State. If anyone's an Ohio State fan is listening, just buckle up.
I think Bethany is, isn't she?
Oh gosh. Sorry, Steph.
I think so. Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, Steph. You would think, when you just change the rules for a team, that somehow they would have finagled one of their players into the Heisman finalists. I mean, you change the conference rules so Ohio State can play in the championship. You talk about changing the date of the Natty so that they can play. You would think that Kirk Herbstreit somehow could have finagled one of their players into the Heisman finalists, but they didn't. I'm telling you, I hate Auburn with this passion inside of me that is unrivaled, but Ohio State is slowly creeping up to Auburn level of hatred just because I think they are so full of themselves. Mark, stop me before I get crazy.
I mean, I was talking to my dad, but it's I hate that they say the Ohio State. It's you can't just say the before it. I know it's true that the Big Ten was awful with COVID. I mean, they were awful. They didn't want to start their season. Then basically they got pressured and they did it. It's so it's not Ohio State's fault. The Big Ten is so incompetent. But they did have to change the rules for them because they said, you know what, we want a team national championship. And if we don't, hypothetically, they didn't even qualify for the Big Ten championship game. And without that win over Northwestern, I'm not sure they get in.
Mm-hmm.
They do, maybe they don't. But with that being said, they were unbelievably impressive last weekend. I thought the Clemson team was extra special. And Justin Fields looked like the best quarterback on the field. And he basically looked like he had broken ribs and he played through this major injury. They were very impressive. I saw the spread is Alabama's -8, so they're an 8-point favorite. I think I'm going to go Ohio State for the national championship. I do that. I believe in them. I think it will be 100-point score between both teams because both offenses are so good and both defenses need some work. I can see going either way. I don't feel confident in it. I like Ohio State because I'm getting more. You get more money if you bet on them. That's the only. I feel like it's basically a coin flip, though. I mean, these are two good teams. Alabama was not as impressive as I thought they were going to be in the second half. Ohio State was really something. Now, maybe Clemson's not that good, and that's part of it. Maybe they were just overrated. But I don't know. I think it'll be a fun game. And it's good to see – I know you hate Ohio State, but it's good to see it's not the same two teams. At least it's not Alabama-Clemson again. You have a different team who's not been in the finals for a while.
Yeah, I agree. I have PTSD from the New Year's Day when Alabama played Ohio State in the Sugar Bowl. I think it was in 2015, and I went to that game and we lost to them, and it was – brutal. It was so bad that I just don't want to watch us play them again. But it's fun to cheer for someone you really, really hate. It's fun to cheer, have your team going at someone you really hate. Clemson, I don't really hate them. I like Dabo. He's an Alabama guy. I was never I always cheered for Alabama, but I never cheered against Clemson. It's fun to have kind of an anger of I not only do I love Alabama, but I hate Ohio State. So this is going to be a fun one. Mark, I don't know if we should.
Real quick, the best thing about the bowl, which you'll hate, but the best thing about the bowl weekend for me is Oklahoma played Florida. And when they were up by 45 points in the fourth quarter, the Oklahoma fans were chanting SEC as they were kicking an extra point, really just blasting. And I loved every second. I mean, that was hilarious as Florida saying they deserve to be in the playoff and they are down by 50 points to Oklahoma.
I will say I hate when you trash the SEC, but I also hate Kyle Trask. So I'm like somewhat okay with this.
But that's the problem. Is like you need to get off the SEC and just be like Alabama's super good and the rest of the teams are not that good. Like that's all there is to it. I mean, I think you have to go with that. I mean, like because Alabama is great, but Alabama has run through every team in the SEC. They're winning by like 40 points. In Florida, they were kind of close, but not even that close. It was 14 points like a minute ago. So Alabama is clearly the class of the league, and they might be the best team in the nation. It doesn't make the SEC good, and I love Florida down by 50 and Oklahoma fans really rubbing it in by chanting SEC.
Fine. I'll think about it. Okay.
Okay.
That's the best you're going to get out of me. Mark, any final thoughts before we sign off for this one?
Just one more thing. I mean, our hometown Titans are in the playoffs, and they play the Ravens at home.
Yes.
They're a 3.5-point underdog, but I do think that the Titans, I think they win the game here, and I think that they move on to the next round. They play really good, and then it could be a really tough matchup if they play the Chiefs. The Chiefs do not like to play the Titans in their defense, so we'll see what happens. But I think the Titans win the first round despite being the underdog.
Tighten up.
That's right. Derrick Henry going to run for 200 yards. Roll Tide.
Roll Tide to my boy King Henry. All right. Thanks, guys. We'll see you next time.